Talkin Theater live on Facebook. I'm Todd Salovey, Associate Artistic Director of San Diego Repertory Theater, and I've got amazing guests today. The creative team of the hit rep musical, now Broadway bound, soon hopefully, 33 and a Third. And we all know that 33 and a Third was the top-selling musical in San Diego rep history. The creative team with us today is Jonathan Rosenberg, Javier Velasco, Brad Ross, and Steve Gunderson. Now, it could be that, like me, you're just feeling a little lonely for that amazing musical, or maybe you didn't see it or you don't remember it so clearly. So we're going to share a few highlights. And Teresa, I wonder if you could play them for us now.
I'm gonna raise a fuss, I'm gonna raise a holler about working all summer just to try to earn a dollar. Every time I call my baby to try to get a date, my boss says, no doubt, son, you gotta work late. Sometimes I wonder what I'm gonna do, but there ain't no cure for the summertime. I'm gonna take you, I'm gonna have a vacation. I'm gonna take my heart to the United States. What I'm gonna do, but there ain't no cure for the summertime blues. No, there ain't no cure for the summertime blues. I said there ain't no cure for the summertime. Bye-bye.
Why don't we start by asking each of our guests to talk about what it is that they did on the show. I know that many of you did multiple roles. Jonathan, do you want to start?
Sure. I was the co-writer of the show along with Brad Ross.
Great. And Javier? Oh, Javier.
You're muted, Javier.
That's okay, because I'm outside. I was the director and choreographer, and I also supplied additional material to the script.
Great. And Brad, beyond being the son of the leading character of the show?
Sure. I'm the co-writer and co-producer of the musical 33 and a Third House of Dreams.
And Steve?
I'm the musical arranger, and I contributed to the script.
So it's interesting that everyone was involved in the shaping of this piece. And I read the piece very early on. I saw a workshop of the piece very early on. And then at the rep, you had this amazing, polished script that had so many elements to it. What do you recall as the highlights of putting it together as a group? And then what were the key changes that you made as you came into the rep that brought the story to life? Do you want to, John, do you want to kick that off?
Sure. Well, I think, working with Brad and I have been working on the script for a number of years, probably 4 or 5 years before Javier and Steve came on board. So Brad and I had a lot of experience working together. We were friends. We had lots of fun. And Javier and Steve have had years of experience working together on shows like Suds and the Nielsen piece that was at the rep. So we had two basically teams that were very familiar working with each other, but not as a foursome. And what I have loved about this process, not only working it for the rep, but in the subsequent months leading up to where we are right now, is this incredible team that we have put together. I mean, we meet lately, we've been meeting probably 2 to 3 times a week on Zoom calls. We've exchanged emails daily. So the most exciting part of this whole process has been working with these 3 other guys. When we put the show, in Javier and Steve's hands for rehearsal, the show took on a life of its own, as far as I was concerned. I mean, I saw things in that show that I would say to Brad, I don't know, did we do that? Did we create that? Did we figure that out? And it was really the immense talents of Javier and Steve that that made the show as wonderful as it was.
Brad, are you suggesting that it was through through the staging and the musical direction that elements of the script came out, or was it dramaturgical work that Javier and Steve did? Brad, what do you think about that?
I think it's both. We work together, and one of the things that I've learned is that, you know, having very little knowledge as far as putting together a musical production, we've learned a lot through working with Steve and Javier in how to really understand what we're trying to put together on stage. It's been almost magical, like John was explaining, where we were able to see their vision of what we wanted, but also what they envisioned would be the best way to portray my father's career. And so for us, it's been basically a ride and through the experiences of what we're doing to really learn about theater and the talent and the creative team of what they're able to put onto the stage has been quite amazing for us.
And Javier, John mentioned that since the production at the Rep, you've been meeting a lot. So what's the work that's been happening besides, you know, working on getting your next production? What's the artistic work been since the Rep?
Well, since the Rep, we've sort of been focusing. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, but somehow I'm not turning into the big person on the screen. That's okay. Since we started working at the Rep, since the show premiered at the Rep, we saw it and we realized that there were some elements and some characters that we could make much richer in order to tell the story, in order to move the story along. So that was, I think that's the thing that we've been working on the most, has actually been sort of fleshing out these other characters. And once we put them on, we suddenly just figured out that they had stuff that they wanted to say, you know, that we're allowing them to do that now. And we're allowing some of the minor characters, I could name some names, but they won't need to just move the story along. Our main purpose when we did the production at the Rep was making sure that we had a strong center line with Stan and with the story of Gold Star itself. And the work we've been doing now has been working on everything that's going to support that, so that we make sure that we're really supporting what we want to say with the show.
Steve, you've worked on and created so many musicals. What do you find distinctive about and special about this musical?
Well, I think, coming from a musical standpoint, it's the broad range of material and the decades that it covers. I've been in some pretty specific shows where I was in charge of the music. And also the other thing working on the script is that we're working with somebody whose father is the character. So he's our encyclopedia. And we won't necessarily do exactly what his father did, but for the most part we do. And so those are the sort of really distinct things about this project. And also, I just have a real excitement for the musical library that they have. And there have been some new songs that we've been waiting for that have come on now. And that's part of the work that we're doing. We'll be able to incorporate some really what I think are historic song pieces and the Gold Star history into this new version, which is really exciting for me.
Yeah, and this is Javier again. To piggyback on what Steve said and to just expand on what I said a little earlier, the show before, we might have stayed in this is about 33 1/3 years in a studio's life. And in the last production, we might have stressed the first part of those 3 years, maybe a little more than we did the second. And I think as we've been refining the script, we've been fleshing out the second part of that 33 1/3 years musically a bit more.
No, that's interesting because there is super interesting music, you know, some Stephen Stills, etc., some Doors, things that happen in the last part of the studio, which would be really interesting to learn more about. Steve, the piece is in part about a studio where a magical sound was created and where legendary performers uh, became the voices that we know. We talk about the Beach Boys and Sonny and Cher, and so many of them. How, when you're doing a play on stage, do you capture that legendary sound?
Well, something that these guys were great about was when they brought me onto the project, I really wanted to find a way to use some of the songs, not just like, here we are recording them in the studio, to look at certain songs that we all know and love and say, what was it like being written? Or what was it like during the recording process? What was it like if somebody's just piddling an early version of something that we're going to hear later, and it somehow coincides with something going on stage? I mean, that sort of thing. The challenge of what you're talking about is overwhelming. So you've got something going for you and something going against you. The thing going against you is that these are masterpiece recordings, and you don't want them to go, gosh, I just want to hear the record. But what you have going for you is if you find dynamic performers like we did, and you have sort of an electrifying story, and so they're listening to it in a new way and in a new situation, you've got that, beneath the ground. But it is really difficult to find that kind of talent. We're talking about legendary musical talent, and we pulled it off, but it's a real challenge. I completely forget the question, but I've enjoyed talking.
Well, what was so amazing for me was the artists who we now know as mature artists at the time of the recording may have been in their teens or early 20s. And the production, which had young actors and actresses singing these songs, was like going right back to that moment. And that to me was incredibly exciting. Sharissa has chatted me that the second clip is ready to be shared. So let's take two. Sharissa, you want to play that out for us? Oh, we're seeing some of the legendary artists that were in the production, or whose work is in the production.
Right. And that was really one of the advantages that we had in writing this show, is that we were actually able to interview those people to get their perspective on the inside story of what was going on at Gold Star.
So Brad, this has, oh, you can see by the advertising up here, how many different amazing songs were in the show. As a theater director and writer who's worked with extant music, it is no simple thing to get great hit music in your show. So Brad, how did you get such a huge, deep list of amazing classic songs that we've lived our life to be all part of one musical?
Well, I think it's a team effort, I will say that. But ultimately, we were able to work with a great supporter of our production out of Arizona. Vincent Van Vliet was very helpful with licensing, and then ultimately he's transferred that role to me. But our success in being able to acquire these songs is a lot like our success, I believe, in doing some of the interviews that Jonathan and I have been able to do over the last 7 years with many of these professional artists, is that we're able to tell the connection to the licensing companies like Universal, Warner's, that these songs were created at Gold Star. Whether it was my father, the engineer, or Larry Levine, or some of the other engineers, it was all within Gold Star. And it has helped open doors for us to acquire the rights to many of the songs that we have. We've even added a few new ones recently for the next version, which I'll share with you, which is We've Got the Beat by the Go-Go's.
Oh, wow.
And I Can See for Miles by the Who.
Oh, wow.
And so these songs they do have a relationship with Gold Star, and we've been able to add some. We've taken away a few others in order to continue to enhance the song list that we've been able to license for our show.
Brad, are you trying to tell me that your dad recorded the Bangles and the Who?
I'm telling you that Gold Star was involved, which means they would either record it, like like the
The
Go-Go's.
Go-Go's. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, the Go-Go's. Sorry.
The Go-Go's. They did the demo of We Got the Beat at Gold Star. But Pete Townsend and the Who, they did their mastering and mixing at Gold Star of I Can See for Miles and Miles. They even did a demo of, what is it, Substitute at
Yeah, and
Gold
Call Me
Star.
Lightning, and Call Me Lightning also, yeah.
Is there any song that's on your dream list that you'd love to have in the show that that you're still working on trying to get?
Well, Brad and I have talked about wanting to get You've Lost That Love and Feeling by the Righteous Brothers. That was recorded at Gold Star, and we weren't able to get it because it's being used by the Carole King musical, Beautiful. But that would be a great one. But you know, we've got Unchained Melody by the Righteous Brothers in our show, which is an incredible song and incredibly performed in the show.
So I think the question that we're all interested in is what now? Do you know? And you know, of course, everyone's hope for the show is that we'll see it on the great bright way one time in the future. And what's happening with the show, and where do you see it going?
Brad, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take that. Well, we're very excited. We definitely wanted to continue working on the book, like Javier explained, and we're making some beautiful changes that we feel are going to continue to enhance the story that we've already developed. But we have been fortunate with our production team, which also includes our partner, Michael Krukey. We've also have an executive producer with Cody Lassen on the East Coast. We're working also with a developmental agreement with Namco and Barry Weissler. And we also are working with a dramaturg, Shirley Fishman, here in San Diego. And we may also be working in the near future again with another dramaturg as we continue to advance our project. But in the big picture, like every show, we're looking for a theater and looking for the opportunity to get 33 1/3 back onto the stage as soon as we can see that the opportunity exists for us. So our focus is kind of fine tuning our business aspects, working on the creative aspects, which we are doing a lot with, but moving forward and being ready to take the stage as soon as the opportunity presents.
Javier, is there something from the original production that you feel could be expanded on or brought out? You talked about some of the later era and some of the other characters. What did you gain creatively by seeing the show each night at the Lyceum?
Well, two things for sure that we have expanded out. There was, when they first go to the music studio, there was a small sort of number that sort of encapsulated that. And then there's the story of Stan trying to build up business, and that was encapsulated by another number, by a sort of rock and roll number, 20 Flight Rock. And as we looked at it, we realized, you know, the first number we really didn't need. We could have just made a much larger number out of 20 Flight Rock and used that to encapsulate the whole thing. So now where that sequence is turned into a much larger, flashier sequence with dancers bouncing around as it's all happening. So there's just much more excitement in that. And also in Act 2 now, because we're telling the story of the music of these years, there was always a desire to actually have, it's not a secret or anything, to have something sort of like a rock concert experience. So in the middle of one of the numbers in Act 2, in the middle of Inagata Vita, the stage sort of breaks out and it turns from a studio setting to a rock concert setting, where now the audience in the house becomes an actual audience at a rock concert. That then so then they end up being at like an Iron Butterfly / Who concert. So things like that, just the sort of opening things up that way, you know, developing that, seeing how many new different ways we can tell the story of not just Gold Star, but the music of this time and how people listened to music. how they would have gotten it, whether it was over a small transistor radio or a rock concert experience or all of those things.
Steve, this is such a rich time of development in music, and the range of style of music is part of the story of this show, and the role the studio played in the evolution of what we would call rock or pop music now. Is there a part of the musical texture of this show that you especially enjoy, or that you know, in getting to work on it, just made you even more dazzled and impressed by the beauty or the energy of a certain kind of music?
It happened a lot, but some specific things is taking a well-known song like Good Vibrations, right? And like, well, they're going to be singing that. That's going to be what the song is. That's a masterpiece. But having to dive in and orchestrate it and take those vocals down and just becoming in awe of every bar of the song, because I would just hear more instruments and hear more harmonies and hear more. So there's that sort of thing, a song that since I've listened to it since I was a kid, you know, I sit back when it's on, but now I sit forward because they have some recordings of some of the songs Brad has given us that are, you know, like in the studio while they're working on it and things like that, which are thrilling to listen to. There's a lot of that for the Phil Spector stuff. The other thing is when I got to do something really creative with a song, and sometimes it was more successful than not, but you know, there's one song that's not known very well, and that's an odd part of the show, and the song is called The Big Hurt. And what that is illustrating is it's so many things at once. It's illustrating something that happened technically with that song that did something else, but it's illustrating a real conflict in the show. There's something going on with recording. There's something going on with the scene. Things overlap. So it's very challenging, I think. But it was thrilling for me to get to do something that lush and complex and to be able to be original with it, because it's not, to me, a classic recording. I think people may know the song, but they don't have it memorized. So I could sort of lush it up way more and do more with it. You don't want to throw fancy things into In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, you know what I mean? You want to try to recreate that. But so those are some examples I can think of that were really thrilling for me.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I just imagine the incredible challenge it is for you. And I know how meticulous you are in texturing all of your harmonies and all of the musicality, and just to go into each of these amazing songs, each one brilliant in their own way, just must have been an incredible adventure for you.
It was, but we had a year. We workshopped it and then we booked it at the rep a year later. So, and I didn't stop working for a year. And again, I talked about this before, but when I first saw the script, I wasn't so interested. I thought it's just going to be the songs recreated. And I thought, I'm not the best guy for the job. I can do that. It's really, really hard work, but I didn't see the creative thing. And we worked together. And I feel like there's so much creative stuff musically that's really rewarding for me, you know, so it sort of covers all the bases.
I'm going to ask a question, and I don't know who should answer the question, but you know, I'm sure that for you, that the piece is not just a nostalgia piece about a time that was. And when we were in the theater, it was clear that audiences across ages were relating to the piece. I mean, you know, next to me in the upper balcony might be, you know, two people who lived the music at the same time, but you're watching on stage someone who's 19 years old who maybe is discovering the music through the musical itself. You know, just in the year that that has transpired since the play was first done, you might say something's happening here, what it is ain't exactly clear. And so how do you feel the play is voicing something which is meaningful in our time?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I have the answer to your question right away, but maybe as I'm speaking extemporaneously, these three gentlemen can come up with something brilliant. But I would just like to say one thing. You know, you mentioned something. You mentioned a word which I actually dislike, and that's nostalgia. I think I'd said it to these guys at some point, whatever, because sometimes it comes up. Nostalgia is the worst thing that you can ever have in any live performance experience, because what it's doing is it's taking the person away from watching what's happening on stage and putting them in their own mind, which they might as well not be there on this, watching what's happening on stage. So these shows where you're dealing with like, somebody may want to go see the show because they have a feeling of nostalgia for that time. But when they're in the theater, it's our job not to send them back to that time, but to keep them engaged in what's going on the stage at that moment right then. So that even if someone is having a memory on stage, if the actor is having a memory on stage about what happened in the past, it has to feel current to the person who's watching it in the audience. They can't relax into nostalgia. So, I mean, that might be one of the reasons why people of all ages were engaged in it the same way, because we were never banking on having people that sort of easy hook of, okay, now, and I love things like the Lawrence Welk Show and stuff like that, but we're all of a sudden where it's like, okay, now I'm gonna hook them in with this song from the 50s so I can just sort of relax a bit and let the people do half of the work. We never went there. We were always making sure that if we were showing something from 1940, the young people were dancing to, it had like 50, I'm sorry, it had the immediacy for those people on stage, and those people on stage weren't in this sort of like dreamy, oh, whatever, so that our audience didn't go back there either. So now that I've said that, and that goes for any show that I see that happens in the past, it's got to affect people in the present now. It can't send people away from their theater seats to a comfy place, right? So now that I said that, maybe Jonathan or Brad or somebody came up with something brilliant while I was
Oh, man,
talking.
That was
Zach
plenty
offered a brilliant comeback here. I think, our goal has been to write a great story, and a great story transcends age. If you're hooked by the story, you're hooked by the story. So our goal was to, taking away all the fantastic songs, is this a story that's going to keep you interested? Just kind of piggybacking on what Javier is saying, we didn't want people sitting there waiting to hear the next song. Okay, that song's nice. Now let's wait for the next one. We wanted people to be drawn in by the characters. And that is one of our major goals in working with the dramaturgs, like a Shirley Fishman. Shirley's looking at the text and in doing so, we were able to make our story so much better in little ways, but it's so much more of a compelling story now than it was even last summer. So I think that's what I think we can bring to people in 2020. Last year was a rough year also for people in this country, and we wanted to bring entertainment to them. We wanted to bring something that would make people feel good when they left. And basically it's our same goal this year. We want to give people a story that they're going to talk about when they leave the theater.
Brad, I imagine you channeled your dad every day of rehearsal and performance. And how do you think your father would respond to the piece?
My father was a pleaser, and he liked to make people happy. That was one of his main roles in being a recording engineer as a human being. To piggyback a little bit on what John just said, is that we produced together with our team and the San Diego Rep and the San Diego Creative and Performing Arts School in a beautiful production that was audience pleasing. And people walked away and they were thanking me for sharing my father's story and for sharing the music. That is what we feel is a goal for me personally, is being able to take the story about Gold Star using my father's career, and also of his partner, and share how these two men started with nothing and took their career along and ended up creating a studio that became basically a historical monument to the music industry for that period of time. So that's where I'm coming from the heart. And I want people to always understand that we will have a show that's always going to be not only just entertaining, but it's going to be pleasing for them for many different reasons than just the music alone.
Great.
And it's Javier, one more time. Todd, to what this is for now, for people now in this time now. You know, the story of Gold Star is not just the story of, oh, all of these amazing hits, or the story of this one guy who clawed his way to the top. The story of Gold Star is the story about normal, ordinary people who helped other people. Normally they helped young people to achieve something artistically or to do something artistically, but basically to help anybody who walked in through those doors achieve something. And it's also about the story about the people who helped those people who helped people. So, I mean, the show is about, you know, how we support each other as human beings, how, you know, to do things. So I think that's that's something that we need to remind ourselves about in these times.
Well, I think the four of you are all role models for me of that characteristic in life. Steve, do you want to share something about what you feel is the contemporary appeal of the show? And don't get nostalgic about it.
No, I think it's been said. I think it's what they said.
So
I couldn't say it better.
take me 5 years. Let's end it off by taking me 5 years in the future. And what do you think is the continuation of the story of 33 1/3?
I think 5 years in the future, you'll be calling us for a couple of tickets to see the show on Broadway. And we'll see what we could do for you. I really think that, you know, our goal is to have a show, a regional show, have another developmental show prior to going on to Broadway. But our sights are definitely Broadway, and you know, we feel really good about our chances. You know,
I have international aspirations, like some other shows I've worked on. I really just feel like the idea that this is a look at American music, you know, would really work well in other countries. But and when you say 5 years, I can safely say I could see it in 5 years. I don't think I could see it in 4.5 years, but in 5.
Well, is there anything else that
Yeah, I'll let the guys have their aspirations for 5 years from now. I like to be in the moment. So my aspiration is that we continue to be working on the show in a positive way that keeps moving forward. That's it for me.
So I've gotten to see the play from a script, wondering if it would ever get produced, to a reading, and then to just an incredibly memorable full production with San Diego Rep and the San Diego School of Creative and Performing Arts, and seeing this incredible music come to real life and touch so many people. And I know at the Rep, we're all super, super excited about the future of the piece. This is Talkin Theater with San Diego Rep on Facebook. I'm with Jonathan Rosenberg, Javier Velasco, Brad Ross, and Steve Gunderson. Thank you so much for being my guest today. And we're sitting there waiting to see the next step, and we can't wait to ring you up and ask for tickets. Thank you so much.
You got it. Thanks. Thanks, Todd.